The podcast champions, myself, Damian G, and my partner in crime, DEO. Find us on Twitter and on various social media on Damian G347, and I'm just DEO. Find the show in random locales, random street, YouTube, all over the place. But it's good to be back, and we're just gonna jump right into the fact that for a guy who hasn't been in a WWE ring for a very long time, certain guy by the name of CM Punk seems to elicit a response wherever he goes. So this past weekend, you being an MMA purist, Dio, saw the fight, saw him catch that arse kicking. Credit where credit is due. Like we talked off air, a man who's in his late 30s decided to up and try something different, to reinvent himself, to try something different. You done got your butt whipped twice. So people have been chiming in as to whether or not he should have been doing this. He should stick to wrestling. Wrestling needs him, this, that, and the third. You and I feel that Punk, for a lack of a better term, doesn't need to do anything except live off his name at this point.
Basically, yeah. Like the whole thing, like just to start off, but from the whole MMA aspect of it, because we're seeing the same thing happening in the WWE right now with Rhonda Rousey.
Yes.
So with CM Punk, the thing, he jumped the line, and that's never cool. I don't care what it is, what industry you're in. If you come from another industry, you need to make your bones and build your way up to being able to be on the big stage, right? Yes. CM Punk was a man in his late 30s when he signed with the UFC, who had a myriad of injuries that we knew about, that had no background in any, not just any combat sport, but any sport at all. And pro wrestling, I'm sorry, it's not a sport. It's just not. You have athletes within this sports entertainment industry, but it is not a sport. Right. So you have that. He came into the UFC on a contract, literally on a contract. He made more in one fight than most of the UFC's entire roster combined. And this is off of his pro fight, just off of a pro fight. Like this is usually how it works, right? Usually you start off in the independent scene, or not the independent scene, sorry. Mixing up my terminology now. Okay. You start off on the amateur scene. You get a couple, fights under your belt just to make sure that you have the wherewithal to actually be in the cage. You learn whether you can take a punch. You try out the techniques that you can do. Show off if you want to, see if you get, if you show off and you get embarrassed, or somebody makes you realize you can't do that anymore. Like, you have to build your way up. It's the same thing as in pro wrestling, where you have to go on the indies and you have to grind out for match after match after match to hone your skills. So CM Punk didn't get any of that, right? He, as we saw in the first fight, he fought against somebody that was like a legitimate not a contender, but he is a pretty good prospect from what we've seen since then. And he got trounced. Same exact thing happened here. So it's one of those things where he came in, he not only took a spot that another fighter could have been using, but he made more than most people will ever make in the UFC. Like, that is money that could have been going towards other fighters. Like, it just is. So from like the MMA perspective, like, we knew what was going to happen. Like, he fought Mike Jackson, who is a journalist, but Mike Jackson actually has he had amateur fights in MMA. He's got boxing and kickboxing credentials about him. And you could see exactly why. Like, the moment CM Punk got hit the first time, I was like, he still does not react well to getting hit at all.
For real.
Like, it was the moment he got hit, his whole body went to just shambles for a second. It's like, that's not a good look. We are like, the moment we saw that in the first round, we all knew, this is exactly how this is going to go. He gassed in the first round. Like, it was just bad. So he should have never been in this situation to begin with, right? It's one thing because you can't compare him to a Brock Lesnar, because Brock Lesnar was a divisional champion in amateur wrestling before he got in it, a freak of nature, right? Like Shelton Benjamin, like you could take people like that, Shelton Benjamin, or like a Gable or a Jason Jordan, people that have like these legitimate backgrounds in sports, or hell, even a Aleister Black or like Shinsuke Nakamura, they had backgrounds in combat sports before they got into pro wrestling, or at least did it while they were doing it, right? Those kinds, that's different from someone like a CM Punk that was like, you know what, I just want to get into the cage and test myself out. And it's like, that was selfish, because you are taking money away from a more deserving fighter. And like, I remember when I tweeted it the other day, there was a lot of dudes that were like, oh, well, he grinded it out in the gym. Grinding it out in the gym is not the same as grinding it out in the cage against other people fighting for $150, $200. Like some of these dudes are literally fighting for food,
right,
for the night, fighting for a beer ticket for the night, or just are not getting paid at all because it's an amateur bout with no insurance. But he could just waltz in, fresh off the street, essentially, with no training whatsoever. They waited, not only that, but they waited on him to train. Like, what?
Didn't they give him like 18 months before his first fight at minimum?
Yep.
Jeez.
Like, that is one of the most egregious things that I think I've ever seen done. And the thing is, he didn't really even bring that much of a fucking bump in ratings like they thought he would. Like, the UFC is starving for stars. And, that's right around when they initially started to need that. And they were like, oh, you know what? We could just bring CM Punk in. It's going to be the same as when Brock Lesnar comes in. It's not.
No, it's not.
It's not the same. It's not the same. So, and like, props to him for getting into the cage. That's a tough thing to do. I wouldn't want to go fight in a cage, right? Like, I trained in kickboxing for just over a year. No way that I would actually go in and do an amateur fight or anything like that. I just don't. That's just not for me. So like the whole thing, like I said, respect to him for doing that, but the way that he went about it was bullshit.
Well, some would say in the inverse, since we're talking about MMA into WWE, etc., like we said before, Ronda Rousey did the opposite. Like she went from MMA, from UFC into a prime spot at WrestleMania because she's a name. And I'm not saying that CM Punk and Ronda Rousey are the same level, so
right,
to speak, but it's the inverse, where she just rolled up in WWE, got a prime spot in WrestleMania, wrestled one match, mind you. And now people are saying, and we've talked about this off air, some people are saying that she's taken to wrestling like a duck to water.
And that's bullshit.
Because from what you and I have talked about on the house show circuit, people have said she looks like garbage.
Right.
And yet she's getting a title shot this weekend.
Right. And like part of that, and now because like Ric Flair, Loose Lips McGee decided to spill that she only has a 1-year contract, which makes sense because anybody, and this is one of the things why when we as when people come over from MMA, when those of us that follow MMA tell you guys stuff, you should listen to us because we have a long history of following these people more often than not.
Yes.
Ever since she went and got knocked the fuck out twice, she has been on the I need to have my husband's babies within like the next few years kick ever since that happened. We knew that was going to happen. Like it's like when they said she signed with the WWE, I was like, that's dumb because she's already stated many a times that she plans on starting a family within the next year or two. So
see, I didn't even know that. You telling me that's news.
Oh yeah, no, that was she. So like when she was doing her press run, and this is the thing about with Ronda Rousey that kind of pissed a lot of us off was after she lost the first time, she, being the person that she is, thought that the MMA media and the MMA fans turned on her. No, it wasn't that we turned on her. It was the fact that we got to see who she actually was. Because for the years that when she first started to, when she got knocked out, it was a slow, gradual process of us getting to see more and more of her as a person, because everything that she put out was very calculated. All the videos, all the vlogs that she did, she only put out the nice portions of her personality. And then when they did the show called The Ultimate Fighter, which is essentially like Tough Enough, but for the UFC, people got to see a real glimpse of what she is like a person. And she's a garbage fire human being. Like, she is, when it comes to how she deals with other people, terrible. Like, she has her merits of like, she is an incredibly disciplined person and like take things very serious, where like, I remember on one of the episodes, one of her fighters didn't make weight. So she took it upon herself to make that weight, just to show, you know, and in a way, it was a bit of a like kind of disrespectful thing to be like, hey, I can make weight. If I can make weight, you can make weight. It's like, it's
one of those kind of motivational tactics.
Really? She's one of those people. Yeah. So like you got to see that. You got to see when she got knocked out by Holly Holm, like the lead up to that, how she just became like, almost, when you're going against somebody who's literally named the Preacher's Daughter, her nickname is the Preacher's Daughter, has never had any sort of a scandal, has just been nothing but nice to people in the media all this time. And all of a sudden, like, Rhonda Rousey just became like this maniac. And everybody was kind of like, what is going on here? This is something, this isn't, you know, what you're saying right. And what you're seeing and what people, everyone that has met her is like, we don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like, this is craziness. And ever since that, when she got knocked out, she refused to speak to MMA media after that. She would not go to she didn't talk to anybody really. Like, she went into hiding for months, which, as you know from your background, when you have a traumatic incident like that happening, just burying yourself away from everybody is not always the best thing to do. And when she did that, and she wouldn't talk to any of the MMA media, like the people that literally got her to where she is. If it wasn't for how MMA media, you know, followed her for years, she wouldn't have been the Rhonda Rousey that she is today. Like, that's just simple facts. So she went to Ellen DeGeneres. She went to all of the big mainstream names because, of course, she was trying to transition out of MMA at that point. You know, she was basically as good as retired until she stepped in the ring again and got knocked out again. So, and ever since that, she said like she was suicidal. She, didn't know where her place in the world was again. And then she looked at her husband and it just dawned on her, I need to have his babies. And it was like, when we heard that, it was like, okay, basically all of us jumped off the boat because we were like, all right, she's done. And when you go into it with Rhonda Rousey's mom, like when you start to actually look at why she is the way that she is, it's like, all right, this is a lost cause for a lot of reasons. So, but yeah, like the whole fact of how she got into the WWE, just because she's a name, she has not been on the indies, and not just on the indies. She didn't even go through the Performance Center, right? Like you have folks that have been in the Performance Center, like take Angelo Dawkins, for instance.
Dude, he's been there like almost 10 years, man.
He's been there like a decade at this point, right? Like, and I'm sorry to say it, he's probably not coming up to the main roster with Montez, because Montez is a star and Angelo is not. He just isn't, right? Mm-hmm. Like you have other folks like Tyler Breeze was down there for
like 9 years, 8 years,
9 years as well. Like you have a lot of these folks that have been down there for a long time. They have been grinding it out for years, proving that they can be trusted in the ring. Rhonda Rousey has not reached that point yet.
She can't even do a Samoan drop correctly, man.
Can't even do a Samoan drop correctly. Like it looks like, I remember when she first threw Stephanie McMahon. Oh no, it was Dana Brooke. Yeah, and it was like when she threw her, I was like, oh God, she is going to kill somebody in that ring. Like she is throwing people like it's judo. That's not good because these people don't know how to fall like it's judo. Like one of the first things you learn in judo is how to fall so that you don't get hurt. Right. It's not the same as taking a bump in pro wrestling, because there are certain moves in judo that you just don't have in pro wrestling, right? Like, you are trying to learn how to fall in an actual combat situation as opposed to a scripted combat situation, right? It's more of a controlled situation as opposed to the chaotic nature of an actual physical altercation. So like, she's doing that, and we see, you know, in the social media age, folks that are putting clips out on, you know, of her matches and like spots that she's doing, and it's like, yo, this is scary. And not like scary that I'm scared for her, but scary as in I'm scared for the person in the ring with her. And yes, she had a great match at WrestleMania, but she was also in the ring legitimately with 3 of the most experienced people in the company. So that's gonna happen. Like, you could have taken one of the new recruitees from like Dubai or like India and put them in the match, and they would have put on a great match too. Like,
and then people are saying that was match of the night. Now, I've barely gotten around to watching WrestleMania because it's been a long time since, but
it wasn't. No, like, that was hyperbole. That was people that were stuck in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, was it a very exciting moment? Yes, I'll admit it was better than I thought it was going to be. I thought she was going to go and stink up the place, but you know, it was better than I expected. But folks were like, "Oh my God, this was match of the night, possibly even match of the year."
What?
She's gonna be? Yeah,
out of here, man. Get out of here.
And like, from people that are like trusted voices in the community too, right? But then like, you have folks that are like, and it's funny too. Pro wrestling fans have this thing where their opinion matters more than anybody else's, right?
Right.
Myself included. I'll be a hypocrite, you know, as I rant about this stuff. But when you have veterans of the business that are currently wrestling on the independent circuit saying that how Rhonda Rousey got into the industry and into the WWE is bullshit, and people are like, you don't know what you're talking about. This is someone that is in the industry. Like, I'm not going to, like, if someone else comes into my industry, which is videography, if somebody from with a mining background comes in and they just happen to be like the best miner in the state and they get to jump in line before I do, that's bullshit. Like, it just is. Sorry, there's no two ways about that. So like, when you have these voices that are actively wrestling are like, yo, this is bullshit, but they're like, oh well, but you see the people that are on the roster like her. Yeah, that's called job security.
That's called covering your own ass.
Like, you can't, like, are you going to go against the boss when this is one of the most vindictive men in the history of the business?
And Vince is temperamental, as is well documented. Right.
He still thinks like a child and reacts like one as well. So it's like, the whole thing is just like, okay, you guys are this damn like this fandom is weird.
So wait, good. That's actually a good segue, because, and again, for those who don't know, you're just tuning in, you're listening to the podcast champs, myself, Damian G, DEO. Find us on multiple streaming outlets, YouTube, etc. Pro wrestling fans, and we talk about this all the time, D. Like, we'd like to think you and I are two of the more objective wrestling fans out there, especially because we have this, this avenue to be able to communicate with people. But every day, I feel as if the objectivity of WrestleFan A just goes so far out the window, where there is just a loss of reality to protect the faves, as you and I like to say.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, dude, but this is part of the reason why, that gif of like you walk in and then you walk right back out, Grandpa Simpson. That is how I view Wrestle Twitter 90% of the time now. Absolutely.
I absolutely agree. Like, there have been so many times where I will get onto the app and I'll just close it right after that. 'Cause it's just like, between the nonsense, like, if you want to have an actual conversation about something, fine, right? Like, if you want to try to be objective about something, if you want to argue with me, that's fine. But if you cannot be objective about the situation, then we can't have any type of interaction. Because, like, I will say, like, with most things that I like, I will be like, I love this thing, but I also realize that it's problematic. I realize that it is actually garbage when you look at it, and take away the fact that I like a specific aspect of this thing. You know, like I can be objective about that. I can still say, oh yeah, I love this thing. But I know for the vast majority of the other people that are listening to this, it's trash. Like, so when we have, especially when it comes to like a person's favorite wrestler, right?
Yes.
Or a favorite person. And like, as much as I love this, I'll take heat for it. I don't care. As much as I'm all for like equality and body positivity and things like that, there are a lot of times where people will overlook someone's talent just because they represent something that you don't necessarily get to see all the time in pro wrestling. You know what I mean? So like, or like, so we'll take body types, for instance, right? So you'll have like, whether it be someone who is larger or taller or, you know, whatever it is. And you have like the Yas Queen Brigade is what I tend to call them.
Is that what we call them? Yas Queens? Yes.
Yes. Where it's like, yes. And then, but it's like, but are they actually good? You know, like this is a industry where it's about entertainment. You know what I'm saying? Like if the person's not entertainment or not entertaining, not good in the ring, like
what's the point?
Is it really something that you should be heaping praise at? Like it's the whole thing of like, because you see it with like a bunch of dudes, especially amongst like dudes on the indie circuit for like the longest time. You had like these dudes who are, you know, aren't that great in the ring, aren't that great on the mic. You know, they happen to be able to do a couple cool moves and like they gain this cult following, right? And it's like, but are they actually that good? You know, and like in the past like 4 or 5 years, it's become a little bit less so. Because like, you know, back in the days of like the Super Dragons and stuff like that, where I was like, all right, is this actually wrestling or is this just kind of showing off flashy moves, right? Like I call that the creator wrestler era, where you were essentially just doing all of the moves possible that were in WWE's creator wrestler mode. So it was like, you know, it's just one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I would rather people be promoted on whether they actually have, you know, made their bones on the road, that have shown that they're trustworthy, that have shown that they are serious about this, you know, than to be like, oh yeah, I'm only going to be in this for a year and I'm just in this for a big paycheck, essentially.
I.e. like CM Punk. If we're going to take it back to what we were originally saying, CM Punk jumped the line, got a full-fledged contract. Not even just a pay per appearance, a full-fledged contract. And it's the same crap that we hear about Brock Lesnar getting like $500,000 a match.
Right.
You know, there's a reason why they jumped the line. There's a reason why Rhonda did it. There's a reason why Brock does it. CM Punk was able to do it.
Right.
It's a name.
Right.
It is in the public lexicon in pro wrestling, because sometimes I think people overestimate pro wrestling's effect on the general consensus.
Absolutely.
You know, because we are, and I put we, and I know I'm not supposed to put we are a small subsect in the grand scheme of fandom. Okay. Right. So when promoters, or let's say Dana, for instance, Dana White sees a name, or Vince sees a name and says, I can make a couple thousand or $1 million off that, especially with CM Punk. He just had quit WWE, doing his Marvel Comics thing, appearing on The Talking Dead. So the man known as Phil Brooks was living his best life right after, professionally speaking, because he got that that full-fledged contract.
Right.
And he got paid to train. Let's be real here. He got paid to train, and for all intents and purposes, it seems like he got paid to spar or be a fighting dummy.
Right.
In his 2 fights.
Yeah.
Now, can we sit here and say we're mad at him? Or can we sit here and say we're mad at the promoters for trying to make a buck? Because I can push it another level. One of my hometown promotions, House of Glory, here in New York City, they announced that they're at their last event on Saturday that the artist formerly known as Enzo Amore will be appearing in his first post WWE appearance
with his terrible rap music.
With his horrible rap music for one of my hometown promotions. Yeah. Now, you know my stance, D.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap. I can't. You can only, and in wrestling, we talk about this all the time, protect the faves. Everybody's a saint. Look, man, I've seen the dark side of sports. I've seen the dark side of a lot of things in life. You want to make that money? Fine. You want to get those butts in the seat? Fine. That's just the cost of doing business.
Right.
But you are not free from the repercussions of the choices you make.
Right. Yeah.
And in this case, I know I'm in the minority here. House of Glory made their choice.
Right.
I'm never going back.
Yeah, nah, it's absolutely like this is matter of fact, taking it outside of the pro wrestling industry, we just saw this happen with IHOP.
Yes.
Or IHOB.
Which I thought was going to be breakfast.
If you have friends that are like Arabic, it's been IHOB to them the whole time. But like when it comes to like this is desperation, right? This is we live in the age of likes and interactions with tweets and things like that, as opposed to, is this actually good for us long term? We want short term success, and we'll just deal with the long term damage down the line, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. And like my current, going through this as well with my current Lucha Libre show that I like going to down here. Mm-hmm. They're bringing in Flip Gordon. Fuck that.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I won't go. Like, point blank period. I was gonna, and like before that, I was going to ask them if I could do photography for the event. Fuck that. Nope. Bro, I'm one of those people, when I say I'm not gonna do something, I'm not going to. I will not support them. I haven't given the UFC money in years. Mm-hmm. Ever since they started to be on the bullshit, right? I still watch the product, but after recent shit, I'm like, I don't even know if I could do that anymore. But like, it's equal parts in this one. Like, I'm mad at both the promoter, and I'm also mad at the wrestler or the fighter, right?
Talent. Mm-hmm.
The talent, because so take for instance, this CM Punk's not the first wrestler to go and fight in MMA. Dave Bautista fought in MMA.
Yes.
But he went and fought an amateur fight, if I remember correctly, at like some podunk club, just out in the sticks kind of, against somebody that was low level as well. He didn't make a big stink about it. He didn't try to, fight on the big stage. And it's like, this is, So what? He fought in 2012 in Providence, Rhode Island for CES MMA, which is like a small time MMA promotion, right? So that's the way that you go about it, right? Like you start on
quote unquote,
right, the right way, quote unquote. You go and you make your bones that way. Like if you're going to try to get into that's one thing, but at the same time, you got to be mad at the promoters as well, because the promoters were like, this is the old adage, that'll put butts in seats. And it's like, but do you really want to deal with those repercussions that come along with that? Because now you look at the whole, like with the CM Punk situation, he's probably not going to fight again. If he does, the UFC will probably give him literally a dead body to beat up in the ring. Because we know now he's not a good fighter at all. Like he's just not good.
Well, now you say that he's not a good fighter. There's also some people who would say he's not a good friend.
Yep. As our guy.
Based on what we also found out this past Saturday, Corey Graves seems to have a bone of contention with Mr. Brooks.
Mr. Hunger Games himself. Yes.
And before the show, we were on different ends of the spectrum. Not that I was pro Punk, but I was pro not putting your business out there like that.
Right.
But you kind of convinced me with your argument pre-show. So let the audience know, as far as like the Corey Graves and CM Punk feud, and I put that in the dorky ass air quotes, right. Where do you sit with that and why?
So I am, since this is the team era still, which the fact that folks, that's even part of our lexicon is, but I'm on Corey Graves' side with this.
Okay.
Because it's like, one, you had a bunch of things happen in this situation. And like part of it was like part of the detachment that pro wrestling fans have from reality after seeing, and this is one of those things, because you had a whole bunch of pro wrestling fans. So this happens when Punk fights and also when Brock Lesnar fights, right? Mm-hmm. Where they go over thinking that, oh yeah, you have a pro wrestler fighting in a real sport, that they're going to be able to do what they do in pro wrestling in MMA. No, it doesn't work that way. CM Punk's not going to be able to put someone to sleep. No, there's no go to sleep here. There's no F5. There's no any of that stuff. Because I remember plenty of times when like Brock Lesnar fights, they would come over and they're like, why doesn't he do this? Why doesn't he do that? It's like, because you can't. You have to have a willing participant for a lot of this stuff, right? So you have that. And like, so with Corey Graves, like when he went on his rant, and like folks are like, oh, CM Punk would whoop your ass. No. Corey Graves actually has, you know, legitimate grappling experience prior to getting to that, into, you know, pro wrestling. If I remember correctly, like he trained in just like probably at like an MMA gym beforehand as well. Like this isn't the same as like a CM Punk that had no background in anything, right? So, and then like you have the whole thing basically boiled down to how CM Punk, when he left the WWE, basically anyone that was still with the company, he was like, fuck you guys. I'm out, so you should be out too. And when you have that happen a lot, and it's like, well, we're not in the same position as you, right? You're a millionaire. If I remember correctly, he bought his house cash. Like that's not
normal, man.
That's not normal, right? Right? Like you can't just buy your stuff outright like that. And most of us, you know, you had folks like Corey Graves, who at that time was still down in NXT. You know, like you have all of these situations, and it's like, okay, people still have to feed their families, right? Yes. Just because you got the raw end of the stick doesn't mean that all of us need to go jump off the bridge too, because you have a parachute and we don't. So, like, I completely got where he was coming from. And, you know, when he said, like, CM Punk was someone that I trusted, like, he got to see my kid after my kid was born before I got to see my kid because I trusted him. Like, me being the person that I am, shit, I completely understand where he's coming from. And I'm petty enough to put that shit out there on Twitter as well. Like, you know, and like I remember I saw folks saying, oh, he's a coward for putting it out in the open. I was like, no, because you said he was a coward for just going to him to say it because he didn't let anybody else know. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, which is it going to be? But yeah, like when it comes to like stuff like this, you can't, and you know, especially when you see how CM Punk is essentially like kind of just, he's burned almost every single bridge that he's crossed over the past few years. Like the whole fact of like, you know, with the whole lawsuit and everything, like how poor Colt Cabana got dragged into that. Like, luckily he's not going to have to pay anything, but like that was, you know, just that whole thing is like, all right, there's a lot going on here. And like the linchpin always seems to be CM Punk in these situations. It's like, if drama seems to pop up around somebody all the time, at some point you have to start realizing that it's that person and not everybody else.
Right. You know, the age-old adage of if one person says something, okay. If three people say something, all right. When 10 people or more start saying it, maybe it's you.
Right.
You know, maybe you need to do a little bit of a self-analysis. And again, I don't know him personally.
Right.
All I personally can go on, because I can't speak for you, is what has been reported through other sources.
Right.
But it's been well known that he's ornery.
Yep.
He's crotchety. He's essentially a 90-year-old man in a 38-year-old man's body.
Yep.
You know, he likes his space. He doesn't want to be bothered.
Right.
We've all been there. Shoot, I'm there now half the time. Right. You know, working with kids for a living.
Oh, God.
I just want to go home and just be the guy who says, get off my lawn. I get that. But if you work in the public eye, And especially in the myriad of ways that he gets his name out. Again, working with Marvel Comics, his history with WWE or the indie scene, now at UFC. Dude, people are going to be prying into your business.
Right.
It happens. And now in this case, because he's a public figure, Corey Graves, deeply hurt, mind you, very deeply hurt. Now, I don't know if he had a little bit of liquid courage in him, you know, that truth serum that made him want to go on social media, because Herman Edwards, former coach of the Jets, now coach of the Arizona State Sun Devils, likes to say, think before you hit send.
Right.
But my man Corey just went, nope, we going to tell it like this.
He emptied the whole clip.
Yep. He didn't even spray. He aimed directly at his target, which is really hard to do if you ever sprayed a gun before like that. It's really hard to hit your target directly.
Very much so. Especially like when you're trying to fire in clusters. It just,
And you're not holding the gun sideways. But that's, by the way, can people stop doing that? Can we stop doing the whole cock the gun to the side thing like this is like Boys in the Hood?
Nah, everybody, you got to learn the hard way. When one of those hot shells comes back and catches you in the neck, then you'll stop doing it that way.
Or even the kickback. Like the kickback of the gun should warrant you to be careful, you know? But like you said, kids are going to learn.
Yeah, the hard way.
When we say kids, we mean people old enough to shoot a gun. But then again, in some states, kids shoot guns. So, but to bring it back to the whole CM Punk Corey Graves thing, before the show, I was thinking, wow, why are you spilling the business like that? But I do get why Corey is hurt, because there are some times in your life where friends are going to kind of leave, but they're going to leave under acrimonious, situations.
Right.
And sometimes the people that get left behind don't know why they got left behind.
Right.
And Corey's kind of like, dude, was here for you. Was always here for you. Where you at?
Right.
And we go through that, D. We go through that because we're adults and we have to experience those kinds of things on a day-to-day basis. The only difference is that this is in the public eye where everyone can scrutinize, and every single wrestling fan on Twitter can either be objective or subjective. And 90% of the time, it's subjective.
Yep.
And that beckons another situation. And as always, you're listening to the Podcast Champs, myself, Damian G, DEO. Find me on Twitter at DamianG347, DEO at I'm Just DEO. Wrestling fans, what's up with you and wanting the Attitude Era to come back? What is up with you wanting the Attitude Era to come back?
Right.
Do y'all realize that aside from Stone Cold, The Rock, maybe DX, maybe, Taker, Kane, that's about it. The cream of the crop in the main event scene was okay. The mid card was pretty damn good with Edge and Christian, the Hardys, the Dudleys. Tag team wrestling was at a premium. But most of the segments in the Attitude Era were flaming Cheetos garbage. Garbaggio, if I want to be technical. And yet we are hearkening back to the days of, I want unprotected chair shots. I want Foley getting his head scrambled like 12 times at the Royal Rumble. Right. I want everything to be bloody and to look like Dusty Rhodes' forehead, after he's bladed one too many times.
Or to be overly, or, of course, part of it too is they want women to go back to being in a subservient role where they're objectified also,
etc. Right.
Right. And like back then, you only had like one woman that got like the big stage, and that was China. And that had more to do, a lot of it had to do with who she was in relationship with, right?
At the time,
like who she was in proximity to. Right? Like, had she not been in proximity with that clique, then she would not have made it to be as big as she was. Right. Let's just be 100% here, right? Mm-hmm. One of the other things too is y'all need to actually figure out when the fucking Attitude Era is. Because
is there a timeline?
Yes, there's a timeline. Yep. So, like Wikipedia is not that far away.
Nope.
So as far as the WWF goes, 1979 to 1982 is the transition era from when it was going from the WWF to the WWF. Right. Then 82 to 93 is the golden age. 93 to 97 was the new generation era. And the Attitude Era is from 1997 to 2002.
Okay.
And then you had that's right around when from 2001 to 2002 is when the invasion and like the NWO came over when they bought WCW. So, you've got that, and then you transition into 2002 to 2008, which is the Ruthless Aggression era. A lot of your favorite shit happened at the beginning of the Ruthless Aggression era. Like, actually look at when the matches were and actually start to actually, piece together what era you were actually in. Because I'm sorry, the Attitude Era is the most consistently terrible era in the WWE. Like, you had a couple bright spots. So, and you had like some interesting things. Sure, you had the Nation of Domination. You had the Rocks, the Stone Colds, the Mankinds, the Canes, Takers, the Brute. Like, you had things, but these all happen in little blurbs, right? These weren't consistent things, right? Like, if you actually go back and watch a random Monday Night Raw from like 1999, most of it is going to be filler garbage. Like, it just is what it is. And like, most of it made no sense. Vince was probably on that cocaina. But like, allegedly, of course. But like, you had like this, this is one of those things. Like, nostalgia is a hell of a drug. You know?
Really is.
Like, it's like when I go back and watch Thundercats, it doesn't hold up. I go back and watch He-Man, it doesn't hold up. Voltron barely holds up. Like, there's so much stuff from like the 90s that doesn't hold up. The Never-Ending Story, I watched that the other day. It does not hold up.
I didn't even like it when it came out. Imagine now.
Yeah. Like, there's a bunch of stuff from like our childhoods and like our teen years where it's like, that shit just does not hold up when we actually go back and like look at it. And Attitude Era is like at the top of that list for me. If you go back and really watch, you could probably make a playlist of about 25 matches and about 25 promos from 97 to about 2002. And you could basically encapsulate all the good parts. Mind you, there are 52 weeks in a year, right? 52 weeks in a year over that period of time. And if you can only take 25 segments and 25 matches, that's bad, bruh. Like, that's pretty bad.
That's really bad.
And like, and even then too, because you had, not only did you have Monday Night Raw, but you also had like the SmackDown, when SmackDown first, and then there was another one that came out on like Sunday Night Heat, the other one, which was a good one, which is like essentially like main event is now. Like, you had all of these things and was like, most of this stuff was not good. Like, if all you can ever go back to is just highlights from stuff, you can't say, you know what, this whole thing was good. That's never a good look. Like, it's never a good look. Like, we can watch, since we're talking about WWE, we can watch NXT for the most part, and it's going to be pretty consistently good most of the time. Like, even though it's developmental, they tell good stories for the most part. The in-ring action's pretty good. Like, it's consistent because they have it down to a science now, right? Back then, there was no science. They were like spitballing it as they went, and that's never a good way to go. Because
that sounds like Vince Russo to a T, by the way.
Yep.
Like, just spitball it, see if it works, and yay! If it works, then I'm going to take all the credit.
Right. And then, like, then of course we hear about creative saying, "Oh, Vince doesn't like to do long storylines because people don't want that." That's because you made them not want that. You have Vince McMahon has molded his audience to like what he gives them, essentially. So, like, even if you went now and you gave them the perfect product, if it wasn't what Vince McMahon has been giving them all this time, you're gonna have a ton of people that are not gonna be happy with it.
Right.
Like, you could have amazing storylines, great in-ring action, the whole nine, and people will be like, I don't like it. Because it's not what
there's always going to be something for somebody to complain about, dude. Like, we've talked about ad nauseum, the Wrestle fan will always find something to complain about. For as often as we say there's something for everybody, there's always going to be the one or two that say, well, back in my day, i.e. the Attitude Era, reminding you again, that was 97 to 2002. So for me, that was my college years, essentially. Right. So that's what the Attitude Era appealed to. Now, given that WWE is PG now, or it's been for the longest of time, I actually prefer this.
I do too.
I prefer this from an in-ring perspective, especially with NXT, like we talk about, because for me, the art form of professional wrestling is being able to watch athletes be athletic.
Right.
You know, not plod and prod and there's nothing athletic about hitting somebody with a chair. I'm sorry.
Right. It's just not.
There's nothing athletic about blading.
Right.
Or falling off a 60-foot high ladder. I'm sorry. It's not artistic. That's not my thing. Like recently, CZW just did the Tournament of Death.
Right. Yeah.
Not my bag of tricks, man. Shout out to Hokai for covering that, but
no, it's a no for me, dog. Like I retweeted him and I was like, bruh, this is stupid. Like, so like, and I'll give you, so my background, or rather what I do for a living, my career, I videotape depositions for lawsuits and court cases. So I get to see usually the bad end of when people get injured. I've been on the NFL lawsuits about concussions. I've been on smoking things. I've been on all types of things, like, can't give details about the stuff. But I'll tell you this. If you meet somebody that has severe CTE, you will never want to see somebody get hit in the head with a chair again.
Nope.
It's terrifying to see an Adonis of a man in his NFL pictures to be a broken, you can't even call them a being because their brain restarts constantly. Like it's one of those things that, and this is the whole disconnect from reality that a lot of pro wrestling fans have, where they only see what happens in the ring. They don't see when the wrestlers have to go home and ice their backs and are in pain all night, and why so many wrestlers from the 70s, 80s, and 90s got hooked on painkillers.
Mm-hmm.
Like Kurt Angle was hooked on painkillers and ended up having to go to rehab because he was hooked on painkillers. Like, we only get to, so many of us, it's not even so much that they only get to see that, but that's all they want to see. It's I turn on my TV and then what happens to them after the fact, it's whatever. Yeah. Like there's a reason, like when I go to an indie show and I see somebody from Lucha Underground kind of phoning it in, I don't get mad at them. Because I know, they've been putting their bodies through hell, essentially, for entertainment, right? Like I remember when I wanted to be a pro wrestler in high school because, of course, all of us did. Like because WCW kid, I'm right down here by WCW. The power plant was like 20 minutes away. It's like me and my best friend were like, we're gonna become wrestlers. And I went to my general physician and he was like, oh yeah, I think so-and-so is supposed to be coming in today. Check them out. Look at when they walk in back here. And it was a famous wrestler. And when I was like, why do you want me? He's like, it's like being in a car crash over and over and over and over and over again.
Right.
In a few minutes. Right? I was like, whatever. And then I saw this person that I saw who was like one of my idols. And I saw them hobble to the back. And I just saw them on one of the Monday night shows. And I was like, fuck that. This isn't for me. When you get to see what these people actually go through, then you'll see, sure, and like, of course, a lot of the fucking hardcore wrestlers have romanticized that, the hardcore way of doing things. But it's like when you see somebody go up onto like essentially like the first or the second story of a building almost and power slam somebody through light tubes onto a trampoline that has no net, where it's just metal. Yeah. Where it's just, so the trampoline was essentially just like metal, and it usually there's like a tarp over that metal for when you bounce, right? So it was a bunch of light tubes on top of that metal, the spring type thing, that caught them. And the thing about trampolines is there's no guarantee that it's actually going to catch you and you won't hit the ground.
Nope.
They hit the ground twice. So they hit the ground when they came down, and then of course you bounce, and then of course there's still more weight coming down. They hit this shit again. And it's like, what the fuck, bro? Like, I understand that y'all want to please the crowd and all that stuff. And if that's what you guys want to watch, sure, it's whatever. It's not for me. But think about what these people are going to have to go through, because the look on their faces, they're like, you could tell, I probably shouldn't have done that. Like, I can guarantee that those dudes got mangled in that spot. Both of them, not just the person on the receiving end of the slam, but the person actually doing it. They both look fucked up. And it's like, when you have pro wrestlers, it's not like the NBA or the NFL or any of these others where there's like a net for you to, there's like a retirement plan. There is no retirement plan for pro wrestlers. You might get a Legends contract with WWE, but you're still going to be working like crazy.
Yeah.
Like, they can't depend on you dickheads to buy fucking t-shirts and stuff like that. Like, yeah, if you go and you sell t-shirts that these guys had to pay to get printed up, and maybe they only sell 5 of those, like, that's not a profit on anything. Like, that's barely allowing them to scrape by.
Right.
And it's like, they're not going to be able to rely on you guys to help them through after their career is over.
Well, it goes back to, like, you and I have been to indie shows a lot, and there's always that WWE legend that shows up for an autograph signing. Again, I could talk about House of Glory because they just did this, where they had Axe and Smash, Mean Gene Okerlund, another promotion had Tito Santana, the Rock and Roll Express, it's Warriors of Wrestling had the Rock and Roll Express. Right. And I remember asking somebody, why the hell are the Rock and Roll Express still wrestling?
Right.
Why? They're like 90 at this point. I know they're not 90, but it's almost as if they're 90.
No, they're 90. When you look at the amount of mileage that they have on their bodies, they are absolutely 90.
Like, I count Tito Santana to be one of the good ones because he actually went to be a teacher.
Right.
And he can still like walk and live a coherent life. But to see Axe and Smash look all dilapidated, and I see this at Comic-Con where you have Jerry the King Lawler, you got Jake the Snake with his fake dye job, like you said, you douche nozzles don't support them enough where they don't have to show themselves out. And this goes with any sport, like in baseball where these guys show up where they were somebody once and then they charge $100 per autograph and some schlub is going to pay $100 for that autograph.
Right.
It's just like in pro wrestling. We don't appreciate them while they're working. And then when they don't work, we don't care. We call them pathetic.
Right.
It's like the culture of, well, what good are you to me now? It's like work. It's like corporate America or any job. You're only as good as what you're able to do.
Yeah, you are. This is very much what have you done for me lately kind of fandom.
Yes. Like,
even when you have the dudes that grew up on those dudes from the 70s and 80s, they're not helping them.
Nope.
Like, there is a reason why you see so many dudes from that era having to go to they're filing lawsuits, right?
Yes.
Which completely understand why they would, because they just were putting their bodies through absolute hell for chump change compared to what it is now, right? But then also why you see them always trying to start beefs with hot wrestlers because they're trying to, that's why you see a Vader trying to pick fights with a Will Ospreay, because they know, okay, this is going to get my name out there and I'm going to be able to get more bookings and I'm going to be able to continue living, essentially, right? Yes. Like, there's no reason that Vader should still be wrestling at all. Man just had like open heart surgery. He was telling us for like 3 years.
He was dying.
Like, there is no reason why these people should have to wrestle when they were like these larger than life people who we thought were getting paid properly, but apparently they were not.
And that goes back to what we're saying about the fandom. You want one way, but the repercussions of after the fact, you don't care. Right. So that's why we don't give you that. That's why the Attitude Era will stay gone. That's why ECW will never come back in its original incarnation.
Right.
Because look at Sabu now. Sabu is still working events with no hip.
No hip.
But still trying to do a triple jump moonsault.
Right. Like that's not hardcore. That's not being tough. Like that shit is sad. Not, there's no reason that anybody in their 50s or 60s, like, sure, you're gonna have like some of those crazy folks, and I don't like using that term very often, but when you have crazy folks like Terry Funk still working in like their 70s, basically,
yeah, he's nuts, dude. He's nuts.
He's doing it because that's just all he knows, right? Like, but then when you have someone who was at one point like some folks that were at like the pinnacle of the sport at times, and like you see him now, and it's like, damn, like superstar Billy Graham was once, who, if you guys don't know, Hulk Hogan jacked every bit of his swag. Like not even like kind of, sort of. No. He took the mustache, he took the colors, he took everything. He even, like, you can go back and look at pictures of superstar Billy Graham from like the 70s and the 80s and look at the red and gold tie-dye, red and yellow tie-dye pants that he had, and then look at the red and yellow tie-dye pants that Hulk Hogan wore when he was in WWF. Like swagger jack like crazy. But yeah, like the simple fact that you have these dudes that were like at one time the shit, and they're just like barely scraping by, or they die penniless. Like Kamala is, like a quadruple amputee at this point almost, or like I know he's a double amputee.
He's a double amputee at least, yes.
But it's like when you have stuff like that and they can't even pay to get proper treatment, and they literally the companies were built on their backs. It's like, damn, what happened? That's because you can't, like pro wrestling fans, they can't rely on us or you to make a living after this. So like, yes, back in the day, it was part of the job to take a chair shot to the head. But like in this day and age, like we know about CTE, we know about spinal injuries. Like the company does not want to, one, it's bad for the company because it's going to cost them money to either settle lawsuits or try lawsuits. Two, it's bad for everybody else. Like you don't want to be known, like if it's bad for the performers because they get hurt, and if they get a career-ending injury, that's it. What can they do after that? They have to completely reevaluate their lives. Then on top of that, then you have like, then the public, just the eyes, like looking at it is bad. The optics on it are horrible.
Well, it's like looking at a car crash, dude. Like we don't want to admit we watched the car crash, but we're still rubbernecking
every time.
I know we're pressed for time, and I know we wanted to cover one more thing before we get out of here on Podcast Champs. Myself, Damian G, DEO. Find me on Twitter at DamianG347, DEO at I'm Just DEO. You wanted to rant on something, kind of just like go hot takery when it comes to Japanese wrestlers.
Oh, yeah.
How people view Japanese wrestlers.
Yeah, there's this weird thing where like a portion of the wrestling community, and this is something that's been going on with just Asian people, period, for decades now, close to centuries even, right? Where Asian men get infantilized and desexualized, while the women are overly sexualized in people's eyes. Like they are fetishized, I should say, right? And like you have this weird thing where like, and like, because we see it, and it's not just pro wrestling. We see this in the gaming communities and a bunch of other things too.
Cosplay.
Where you see an Asian man will be, doing his thing, right? He's in the ring wrestling, and people were like, "Oh my God, my sweet, amazing, innocent
baby,
never been touched by sin." I was like, this man is literally rubbing his dick on someone's face. Like the gimmick is overtly sexualized, but for some reason, like y'all are treating them like they're eunuchs. What is going on here? This is like when you have But then, go to NXT and, you see Ricochet and Velveteen Dream, grinding on each other's arms, and people are like, oh my God, they are fucking. But when you see the same thing over in Japan, oh, these men they're just sweet, innocent angels. It's like, what is going on here? This is something strange. And then, of course, when it comes to Joshi, like, you have a bunch of dudes that are just like, you guys know about fetishization. Like, we don't really have to go too much into it. Like, when it comes to dating sites, Asian women are the most messaged women on every single platform, no matter what it is. And there's the most fetishized. They receive the most weird messages. It's just is what it is. So we don't have to go into that. But yeah, it's just weird. It's like, they're still men, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I think part of it, like, because every now and then we see when it's a big issue, when like some shit happens where like, a Japanese wrestler, maybe they beat a spouse or something like that. We'll find about the big stuff like that. But I kind of think because of the language barrier, a lot of times things that we would just be able to see as far as like dirt sheets otherwise just kind of go to the wayside because we just don't know what's being said. I guarantee if we could all read katakana and kanji, we could find out all types of fuckery that's going on over in like the Japanese wrestling.
And unfortunately, Google Translate cannot translate the kanji for you. Sorry.
Yeah, there's no one-to-one translation when it comes to like before we go, like, I remember during a deposition one time, we had to get a translator for a Japanese witness. And there was like a concept, or it's like something that we had. I think it was like they asked, hey, imagine this. And like the translator was like, can you rephrase that? Because there isn't a one-to-one translation of that phrase. Mm-hmm. And it happens a lot because sometimes one word can mean a whole paragraph. Yes. And for us, like, we just have things that mean nothing. It's the same thing with like with Spanish to English. Like, there's a lot of regional Spanish that there'll be like a word for like, how you feel sleepy because you stayed up too long. Like, there's a word for that in Spanish, but there's not a word for that in English, Right. Like, there's a lot of things like that. So there's like not a one-to-one translation when it comes to a lot of things. So yeah, and Google Translate's fucking horrible. Like, I am so surprised that Xavier Woods was like I think he was using Google Translate the other day when he was talking to Shinsuke Nakamura and Asuka, and like they actually understood what he was saying because it was like, what is going on here? But yeah,
I don't know. Just me personally, dude. Like, I'm with you. The hypersexualization on one hand, and then the de-emphasis on it, where they can do no wrong. Right. Goes back to what we said at the beginning of the show. Protect the faves.
Yeah.
Under all circumstances, protect the faves. And that seems to be what's happening in a lot of fandom.
Personality.
The NFL, and we'll get out of here on this. The NFL is number one on the I'll forgive it as long as they help my team win.
Yeah. Yep.
The NFL is king for that when it came to like domestic abuse or random acts of violence or whatever you want to call it. And now we trickle that down to professional wrestling, where no matter what, people will go down with the ship. And personally, this is why I hold no attachments in the world of sports or in the world of professional wrestling. Yep. I can't do it.
Like, there's still one of the things that we need to realize: they are still people, and people are very fickle creatures.
They are fallible. They are not perfect. Yep. So all in all, I'd say that's a good time to get out of here. Again, you've been listening to the Podcast Champs. My name is Damian G at Damian G347. You're talking to my boy DEO at I'm Just DEO on social media. DEO, is there anything else you want to pub?
Not right now. I'm going on vacation in about a month, and when I come back, I'll have like a whole bunch of pictures and things of that nature. But other than that, yeah, I'm not really doing anything now. Maybe down the road we'll make this like more of a weekly type thing.
Yeah, I feel like we've been trying to make this a weekly type thing, but considering I am in transit, a lot, especially next month, as you well know, and a lot of people may not know. I'm leaving New York. I'm moving. So once I get my actual self situated and I have consistent Wi-Fi and, you know, a place to record where it's not noisy, you'll get this show a lot more often, probably once a week, at minimum once every 2 weeks. A little bit more hot takery. I feel like you and I could delve into that a little bit more because I'm always trying to be Mr. Broadcast Journalist, but I feel like I should cut loose every once in a while.
It's good for you. It's good for you.
It's good for you. So that's what I'm pumping. That's what I'm pumping, is that I'll be leaving New York. Oh, by the way, before I forget, this weekend, if no one's doing anything in the tri-state area, please come out to Battle Club Pro's second women's only event, Malice at the Palace. Tickets on sale at Battle Club Pro, I believe battleclubpro.com, but you can find them on Twitter at @XBattleClubPro. Another all women's wrestling event. I was at the last one, May the Queen Reign. And for those that don't know, I was the special guest ring announcer as one of the sponsors of the Mia Yim versus Tessa Blanchard match. And I did my job because I got booed. And I got streamers thrown. So I had the best of both wrestling worlds. So please feel free, hook my boys up. Go watch this event, dude. If you're in the tri-state area, or dudettes, if you're in the tri-state area, feel free. Go to X Battle Club Pro on Twitter. Also, they have an event, the last event I'll be going to before I move the day after to Texas. July 21st, they're back in the Bronx where they started. And that's my hometown promotion. And I will go to bat for those guys because they work hard. I've seen it. I've been there. And you know what? If I could pub them, I will. But all in all, your boy's back. It's good to be back. And once I get my living situation orchestrated, you'll hear this voice more often. So as always, Damian G, DEO, find us on YouTube and multiple streaming outlets, wherever you can find Podcast Champions. Don't be a dick. And without you, there is no us. Peace. Yep.